came to my lesson. I came to your lesson. And? I came too. Do I get a sticker?
Well, you do get paid.
Yes, but they get to not get paid and still come and learn. So I'm like, well, we didn't need me.
Alright, so have we identified the main challenge of Suzuki families?
Demotivation.
The main practical challenge?
Finding the time.
Yeah, practicing and listening. Yeah?
Mm.
They all love to come here. It's not a problem for them to come here and do their group lessons and do their music lessons, their private lessons, their music mind games. They love that. It's actually getting them to do the work at home. And even here, where we're offering them three sessions a week, 2 group lessons and a private lesson, that's not enough, is it? Like, if they don't do anything at home,
No.
it doesn't touch the sides. So I think that is the biggest challenge, and the other challenges such as lack of motivation, being stuck in the same place for ages, not feeling that you're making enough progress, all stem from that one big challenge, don't they? Like, unless you've got something very unusual, not even special needs like in the kind of usual capacity, but like quite extreme special needs, if the practice and the listening is happening at home, the progress will be steady, at least. And, not many people are like upset by learning a new piece once a month, or, I don't think that they feel frustrated by being in book 1 for maybe 4 or 5 years. I think what they feel frustrated by is being on the same piece for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and not feeling like they're able to identify in what way they're progressing. So I think, this plays into the whole idea of like naming certain pieces and mountain pieces. This is going to take longer than other pieces will, and managing their expectations, but it also is about recognising their effort and encouraging that effort. So I think things that can really help, especially with the beginners, are using practice sheets. So, for example, we have some practice charts that are a whole month. And I wouldn't say, like we have certificates, we have general certificates for well done and the teacher puts in what they've done well. We have certificates for finishing a Suzuki book or a sight reading book. We have certificates for practicing and listening every day for a week. And then various other things, that you could do as you like. So would you like to take these and pass them around? So that's practicing and listening every day. That's a general certificate that you can choose what you would write onto it.
Am I meant to hold on to it?
No, just have a look and pass them around. They all live at reception.
So what's this one?
General one.
Just
general.
you put in why you're pleased with them. Finishing a book, the sight reading book looks the same, it's just different colours. How many different ones is that? 3. Yeah.
Yeah. 4, actually.
3 different.
3 different ones,
Oh,
yeah.
that's the same.
Oh, I don't know what I'm looking for.
So what do you use this one for, like boxes and things?
Yeah, just if they've, if they've done, let's say they've not been practicing very well, but they've had a week where the parent says, they've started each practice when I've asked them to. Like, amazing, you may have only practiced 4 times this week, but you've started when you were asked. Or, they've made a really significant improvement to their bow hold, or, they've done a really good lesson where they weren't moaning. And any of those, anything that you want to just recognise.
How often would you give them out?
So the practice and listening every day for a week, I will give whenever they tell me that that's what they've done. So like I've got a student, Lila, will have done 4 years of practicing and listening every single day in a row.
Wow.
On the 28th of April.
A wallpaper of certificates.
Well, yeah. So I did offer them to her every week for a while, and then I said, "Do you want to keep doing this?" And she was like, "No, not really." So I will get her a trophy. My
And the parent gets the trophy as well.
Write that down. Exactly.
Maybe trophy for a year.
Trophy for a year, yeah. And I just go on eBay. You can buy for about £8. Any number of trophies that get engraved with, you know, congratulations to XYZ person. Huh? I know. And I do say that if they're really sick, that isn't them missing it. Like, it's, you know, if they're unable to practice, then that's different. If they hurt their arm or whatever. And also that they can catch up. So if they, you know, let's say they've done 6 months and then one day life just gets away, they can do a double practice the next day. But it does have to be like double what they would usually do, double the minimum that they would usually do, not just like a long practice. So I think practice charts and things like this can really help, both in terms of the parents, like just monitoring what they're actually doing. It's really easy to think that you've done lots of practice and then realise you practiced like 3 or 4 times. For us as well as for them. And then like a slightly more grown up version, or just less sort of kiddie, more content based. And then we also have, this is not what I expected. We also have a bunch that I obviously need to print some more of like just 7 days to sort of get them started, that have lots of pictures and stuff, and they just put a sticker on every day that they listen and practice. So I think those things can be really helpful, in addition to, you know, stickers, general encouragement. What other things can you recommend to a parent who, let's say in a situation where you've got a parent who's on side, but the child is resistant, what advice stroke incentives can we offer?
Trip to the zoo. Like,
Sorry?
Like those little, like, getting them out of the house, like, you know, you do good practice for 2 weeks, you know, more than 3 or whatever, take you to the zoo or something.
Excellent, yeah. So it's particularly nice to offer an experience rather than a thing.
Yeah.
But, you know, you can also say, I'll buy you a new toy from the toy shop or whatever. But yeah, that's a great one. So like, and choose something that's special enough it wouldn't happen anyway, but that you can deliver on. Cinema's good, zoo's good, although the zoo in London is very expensive. Going to the farm is good, that's free. You know, having a friend over after school one day, like, unless they happen all the time anyway. So yes, very good. Other thoughts, please? Devin, what else do you think you could offer to a parent, advise a parent to do? What about something during the practice? How can they encourage the child more during the practice?
Is food a bad one?
Sort of depends on the parent and the child, I think. No, I think you can say to them, well, what would you say?
You know, if you can get through all your root pieces, you get, you know, a little snack or something.
Yeah, I think the thing with food is that it does need to be a treat, because you also want to encourage your parents to make sure the children have eaten before they do their practice, because otherwise they'll be very cranky. So I think, you know, things like, here's a packet of chocolate drops, I'll put one in your bowl every time you do something good, can work. But some parents are really, like, lots of parents don't care at all about that, they're like, that's fine. Other parents will be like, I'm not bribing my child with chocolate. You know, I do think it's useful to point out to parents and ourselves that bribery is for a corrupt or immoral act. If you look it up in the dictionary, what you're doing is rewarding them, but what you might find is that you have certain parents who don't want to use food as a reward. You know, that's fine. I have some people who, like Tilly has had money for credits since she was about 8, and some people are like, oh my god, isn't that paying her to play the violin? I'm like, well, I get paid to do my job and I really enjoy it, but I wouldn't do it as much as I do if I didn't get paid. And so this is a job that she has to do. She doesn't have a choice about it, and so this is a reward. Like, she's not playing the violin in order to get paid, but it does help her to motivate
So
herself.
we're getting paid to learn a piece.
Yeah. So, you know, like I don't think, I don't have a problem with it, but, you know, just be aware that lots of parents have different sort of feelings around all of these kind of, you know, like, I think one of the problems that happens is the parents who are like, I want my child to practice for the inherent love of music. And you're like, well, if that happens within 10 years of them starting, then you're really lucky. Like, you know, my child's been playing for 11 years, she's not doing that yet. It does sometimes happen, but it's very unusual. And mostly it doesn't happen until they're, you know, playing in big orchestras, like recognisably outstanding at school, you know, like that kind of like really high level, you know, 15 plus kind of age. So when you have a 6-year-old's parent saying, I just want him to practice because he's learning the violin and that's its own reward, it's like, well, do you really think Lightly Row is its own reward? Would you be happy to play Lightly Row for its own reward? Like, what you see when you see someone playing the violin is what we all see, the parents can see that what we mean is that's a promise of one day you'll play something that is genuinely rewarding. Country dance maybe, Brahmo Gavotte, Mozart Violin Concerto, you know, whatever. But it's not a very good reward in and of itself, being able to scrape through Lightly Row. So I do think it's worth pointing out to them that, you know, we offer extrinsic reward, i.e. rewards from outside, in order to keep them going until the intrinsic reward of music itself is enough. And sometimes that happens earlier and sometimes that happens later.
I think before the kind of musical reward, you can have the satisfaction of realising how much you've learned to do.
Definitely.
So the accurate praise thing with
Yes.
the Lightly Row, where like you're like, look how much you've achieved, can feel like
Definitely.
intrinsic.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, children are hardwired to learn and most of them really enjoy learning, and I think it's a very different thing to say, you know, there are lots of kids who enjoy playing not for the sticker, they like getting a sticker because it recognises their achievement, but they do it because they like to have mastered something. And yeah, that is completely different from music being its own reward, because it doesn't have to be a musically sort of elevated experience in order to feel like, you know, I'm pleased I could do it. Yeah, so you might get your you know, you might get neat retakes in Song of the Wind and feel like, yeah, I did that really well. That's its own reward, that is an intrinsic reward. But it's not the intrinsic reward of music, like in a big, broad sense. I think it's the intrinsic reward of like having learned something new and mastered it when it was tricky, which is most of what motivates the kids, I think.
And it's
Is that
even better
a good
if
distinction to draw.
they can recognise it for themselves rather than just be told.
Yeah.
So if, like, partly just being a Suzuki student, I realised that I feel, even now today, like slightly dependent on feedback from people.
Right.
Whereas I think people who aren't used to a good Suzuki parent giving them very accurate praise all the time better develop their own sense of, I know that I'm doing well at this, and they don't need that external, possibly.
I think it depends on the teaching style that you have. Like lots of teachers, lots of students in traditional method, whatever that is, still are telling their students everything they need to know. That was right, that was wrong. Not actually teaching them how to listen and assess their own playing. So I think that it's not so much a Suzuki versus not Suzuki, but I think it's about whether we are training our students to assess themselves, and so that all that stuff about what did you think was good, what did you think got better, you know, what would you give out of 10 for intonation, all of those kind of things will bring the students' awareness higher in what they're doing. And it's important to mix that up with accurate praise, where you are like, that third finger was really ringing, well done. So yeah, I think that's very helpful. What are other rewards that we offer? Maybe not in our mind, they don't seem like rewards, but what are the other things that keep our families going?
The social aspect.
Absolutely, the social aspects, coming to group, having a little party after the end of the last term, of the last group of term, you know, making friends that they see only here, particularly, like if they're friends with people at school who also come here, they're going to see them tomorrow anyway. But like once a week when you see your particular friend who just does piano with you or cello with you or whatever, those things I think really keep lots of the kids going, especially once they get to being teenagers and they're sort of, their time is more pressured, you know, and they may not feel, they're starting to think like, you know, like Tilly came home the other day going, we've been asked to start thinking about our CV. I'm 14, I don't know what to put on my CV. And I'm like, well, yeah, I think that is a bit early. But, you know, by the time you're 60, you've chosen your GCSEs, you're thinking about what you're going to do seriously. And if violin or whatever you're teaching is not something you're going to do seriously, it starts to be a bit like, why am I dedicating all this time to this essentially hobby? And that's where I talk to them a lot about, you know, there's like a bank account, you've put in your savings of all of this practice and all of this listening, which means that now you can keep going and keep enjoying it with very little saving happening at the moment. Like you could practice a couple of times a week and come to group once a week and have a nice time and enjoy playing those pieces and still learn how new pieces go. Whereas if you'd always done that, you wouldn't be able to. But it's like you can draw on your savings now. You don't have to be, you know, you don't have to be practicing and listening every day when you're 16. If you've been playing since you were small and you've been dedicated enough to put the work in early on, then you can ease off and still gain the benefits, like personally and also in terms of learning. So I think that can be really helpful. Good. What else in terms of experiences that they might work towards?
Yeah, big concerts and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So lots of people love concerts, lots of people also hate concerts. But, you know, one of the ideas of the Suzuki approach being so many different opportunities given is that you find what it is that each student will like. So, you know, that's one of the reasons we do music mind games and instrumental group and private lesson here. And we have solo concerts, we have concerts in group time, we have big concerts, we have the groups concert, we now have the orchestras and ensembles concert, like all of those things, different kids will be drawn to. Some of them want the spotlight and stand up and say, I'm going to play Sights 1, amazing, they're so excited to finally play a concerto. Others will be like, oh, I really like the group concert, especially when I can stand at the back and no one can see me. But they still get that feeling of performance, you know, and so we've just got to like try and offer as wide range of incentives as possible in order to keep those kids going. And I think that can also translate into different things, that different subjects within music that we teach. Like some kids will love improvising, other kids will love playing folk, other kids will love doing 100% of the Suzuki stuff and they never want to play anything else. Other kids want to do jazz, you know, want to join a band, like all of this stuff. And if you've given them a really good grounding in Suzuki, being able to play by ear, being able to play sight reading, and being able to improvise, then they can do anything, right? There's nothing that they can't do. They can choose their own path. Whereas if you've just done completely straight Suzuki and they can't improvise, then they'll have to start from scratch on that whenever they think that is what they want to do. And similarly, if you bring, you know, students up only doing jazz, then they can't very easily just go over to the same level of skill in classical. There are some stuff that they need to learn before they can kind of catch themselves up. Any other thoughts?
It's a difficult balance, isn't it? Because you don't want to give too many certificates or too many rewards, because then they just expect reward completely, or they expect to be given something every time they do something. Why when you came back in, I was saying I don't hand out stickers as much as I used to, partly because I forget, but also because when a student walks in and says, "Where's my sticker?" I'm like,
Yeah.
no, that's not why I'm giving you a sticker. I'm not giving you a sticker for the sake of it. It's because I'm recognising something that you did. And if you're not recognising something that you did, then I'm not going to give you a sticker. So, yeah, I'm just mean.
Well, I don't think it is mean. I think, you know, different levels of stickers. Some teachers don't use stickers at all. Some teachers, like me, use about 4 a lesson, 5 a lesson for my little ones. Other teachers, you just get a sticker at the end of the lesson if you've done a good lesson, and it gets removed or withheld if you haven't. Like, there's all sorts of different ways to use it, and I don't think there's necessarily one right way. You know, it's just your personal choice. But I think that, you know, if you set up an expectation that when I work hard I'll get a sticker, and then you forget and they're like, oh, I must have not pleased my teacher because I didn't get a sticker, that can be dangerous. Like, you have to be consistent about it. And similarly, if you've set up an expectation that they get a sticker no matter how they behave, then that's not going to serve you, because then, yeah, you're just giving stickers away for nothing. Like, you know, I have said to students, do you think that you deserve a sticker right now? And they've gone, yeah. I'm like, tell me why? Like, only if they've been really bad. They're like, well, you know, whatever. But actually, what do you think the stickers are normally there for? For trying hard, for doing your best, for being polite, you know, for respecting me, for respecting your parent, blah, blah, blah. Did you do those things? No, okay, so try again next week and maybe you'll get a sticker then. But it's like any of those kind of reward stroke, you know, carrot and stick type of situation. You've just got to be prepared to follow through, and you've got to be consistent. Otherwise, it just ends up being confusing.
I think also if the reward is too stimulating, or like right after the practice, like I remember being told like, oh, you can play video games after your practice or whatever, and then like I'm thinking about it all throughout the practice, and like playing my pieces super fast even though it doesn't make a difference. So yeah, that as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Yeah, it's got to be, not distracting. And that's one of the things that sometimes, like, I don't know if you guys have all watched my lessons with Riker and Noelle, but sometimes I get this feeling off Valerie, maybe it's completely my projection, but sometimes when, like, Riker, particularly, you know, 5-year-old kid, is like rearranging his whole Lego tower, I kind of get this feeling like this isn't lesson time. And that's when I always make a point of saying, you know, it might seem like we're just wasting time right now, but if this is going to make him able to focus on the next thing, as well as he's just focused on that because he's excited to build the next bit of his tower, that's completely worth the time. Because what ends up happening instead is, come on, Riker, let's do this. Like, oh, can you make your robot? Come on, like, are you with me? What are we doing? Like, come on, can you focus? And that's just like negative, and it takes up just as much time as just letting him do 30 seconds of Lego without you know, interrupting, and then also no one gets cross.
What I've done recently, which worked quite well, was at the school, they get to draw a picture on the whiteboard, because it's quite a big thing, and I give them 10 seconds the first time they can do it, but I increase it by 10 seconds each time, so they want to do more well to be able to increase the time. Does that make sense?
Nice. Yeah. Good. Trying to think if there's anything we've...
Wait, sorry, what's the time for?
So I'll give them 10 seconds to do a drawing or whatever. Then the next time they get to use the board, so it will be after repetitions usually, they get 20 seconds, and the next time they'll do 30 seconds. So I can ask for more and more demanding things, basically.
Okay.
I think the other things that are useful for parents in practice are things like the non-verbal recognition stuff of, you know, every time I see that you're trying hard, I will just take a piece of Lego and put it in this pot and you can play with them afterwards, or I'm going to put a tick on a piece of paper, or like whatever it is, something, you know, like matchsticks, not live ones, like coloured matchsticks, you know, craft supplies, any of those things, like pom-poms, like anything that you have a load of small things and you can just literally pop them in as they're playing without interrupting them, but it's like, you know, that every time I do that, I've seen something that I like in what you're doing. And then at the end you kind of get to like, look how many good things you did, that's really awesome. But it's not like stop and talk about accurate praise every time. That can be really helpful. In terms of not teaching every single second in order to get more effective teaching time happening, I'm just going to remind you about finishing the lessons at 27 minutes through half an hour and doing the roundup of what the practice and listening expectations are, so that you make sure that you train your parents to expect the lesson to finish that bit early. It really helps not running over, because what happens when you don't do that is that you get to the end, you do your bow exactly 30 minutes later, and then the parent says, oh, we've got a concert on Tuesday, what do you think we should play? Or can I just ask you this thing about the sight reading? On this page we're having da 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 da, and then suddenly you're 5 minutes behind, and if that happens every lesson, then by the last person in an afternoon, you're like half an hour behind, which is totally unacceptable. So do get in the habit of sort of thinking of the last thing starting at about 25 minutes in, and then finishing. Do your bow, let the kid pack away while you're talking to the parent, obviously unless they're really tiny, about what they're going to do next, this week, not next, what we're going to do this week. Cool? Any questions? Good. I can't remember what the last thing on today's list was. Nor can anyone else.